The encounter asterisk. The night on the lonely planet was silent, but the silence was heavy, like a warning. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the edge of a deep crater, staring at the broken remains of a ship that did not belong to humans. His boots sank into the strange red dust, and the cold wind carried the smell of burned metal. He had seen many wrecks in his life as an explorer, but this one was different. The ship was alive with an energy he could not explain. Parts of it glowed with a soft blue light, as if the metal itself was breathing. Sparks of alien technology still hissed in the darkness. Daniel gripped his pulse rifle tightly, his finger hovering near the trigger. Every instinct told him to turn back. Every lesson of survival said, "Stay away from unknown life." But something inside him refused to leave. He climbed down into the crater. Each step crunched loudly on the debris, echoing in the vast silence. The wreck was half buried, its once smooth surface twisted like paper after fire. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the side, writing he could not read but felt in his bones. Then he heard it, a sound so faint he thought it was the wind at first, a low cry, a voice, weak, trembling. Not human. Daniel froze, his heart hammered. He raised the rifle, aiming at the dark opening of the wreck. The cry came again, softer this time, like someone losing their strength. Against his fear, he moved closer. The inside of the ship smelled of smoke and iron. Shadows stretched across broken walls, wires hanging like vines, his helmet lamp cut through the dark, and finally he saw her. A figure lay against the wall, her body trembling. She was not human. Her skin was pale silver, shining faintly in the light. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly violet. She wore a suit torn and burned, and her hands pressed tightly against her stomach. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The alien woman was pregnant. For a long moment, he could not move. His mind screamed at him, "This is dangerous. This is not your fight. Leave before it is too late." But then she opened her eyes and looked at him. Not with hatred, not with anger, with fear and hope. Her lips moved. He did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. A plea, a call for help. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly. His voice was rough, uncertain. "I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But I can't leave you like this." She reached out a trembling hand. Her fingers brushed against his arm, light as a feather, but the touch carried more weight than any order he had ever received. The ship groaned as if alive, metal bending under some invisible pressure. Sparks fell from above. Daniel knew the wreck would not last much longer. He had a choice: leave her to die, or risk everything to save her. He made his choice. Sliding his rifle across his back, he bent down and carefully lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, fragile, like glass that could shatter with one mistake. She gasped in pain, clutching her stomach tighter. He could feel the faint movement beneath her arms, the life inside her still fighting. Daniel pushed through the smoke, carrying her out of the wreck. The cold wind hit him again as he climbed up the crater wall, his muscles burning. Behind him, the alien ship gave a final cry, a roar of collapsing metal, and then silence. At the top, he laid her gently on the ground. Her breaths were shallow, her eyes half closed. Daniel knelt beside her, unsure what to do. He had no medical kit for alien biology, no translator to speak with her. But when her eyes met his again, he understood. She trusted him. A stranger. A human. The stars above burned cold and distant, but in that moment, Daniel felt the weight of something far greater than himself. He had not just found a survivor. He had found a secret, a burden, a life that could change everything. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The rescue. The night dragged on with a heavy silence, broken only by the weak breathing of the alien woman lying before Daniel. Her silver skin reflected the pale starlight, and her violet eyes flickered open and shut as if fighting against the darkness pulling her down. Daniel knelt beside her, his mind racing. He had patched up human soldiers in battlefields, stitched wounds, and carried injured comrades across burning ground. But this was something else. She was not human. Her blood was not red. It shimmered faintly blue where it leaked from a gash across her side. His hands trembled as he pulled out his field kit. "All right," he muttered to himself, his voice low, steadying his nerves. "Pain is pain. Life is life. I just have to try." He sprayed a sealant across her wound, the foam hissing as it met her strange skin. To his relief, the bleeding slowed. She winced but did not push him away. Instead, her hand reached toward him, gripping his sleeve weakly as if telling him she trusted him, even if they could not share words. Her other hand never left her swollen stomach. Daniel noticed it every time she shifted. She was not only fighting for herself, she was protecting the life inside her. 2 lives, maybe more. The thought struck him like a blade. If he failed, he would not only lose her, but also the unborn children she carried. The night air grew colder. Strange howls echoed from the jagged hills beyond the crater. Daniel froze, rifle in one hand, scanning the shadows. He had read old reports about this planet desolate, uninhabited, but not without dangers. Predators roamed the night, drawn to the scent of blood. "We have to move," he whispered, glancing back at the alien woman. Her breathing had grown uneven. She could not walk. He would have to carry her again. He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest. She shivered in his arms, whispering something in her strange language, her voice weak but desperate. He did not understand the words, but the tone was clear. "Hurry." Daniel pushed forward, away from the wreckage, toward the small shelter he had set up near his lander. His camp was only a half-mile away, but in the dark, with unseen eyes watching. From the hills, it felt like an endless march. Once, he heard movement-sharp claws scratching against rock. His heart pounded. He stopped, pressing his back to a boulder, tightening his grip on the woman. The shadows shifted. Yellow eyes glimmered for a moment in the dark, then vanished. Whatever was out there was waiting, stalking. He didn't fire. One shot would echo through the valley and bring more. Instead, he forced himself to keep walking, every muscle tense, every sound amplified by fear. At last, his camp came into view. A low shelter made of reinforced panels, lights glowing softly against the night. He stumbled inside, sealing the door behind him. Only then did he allow himself a breath of relief. Daniel laid the woman gently on his bunk. She groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she seemed to study him, her gaze filled with both pain and gratitude. He knelt beside her, opening a pack of nutrient gel. "I don't know if you can eat this," he murmured, holding it near her lips, "but it's all I've got." She looked at the packet, then at him, hesitation flashing across her face. Finally, she took a small sip. A shudder ran through her, but she swallowed. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Hours passed slowly. He worked on her wounds as best as he could, his limited tools not meant for alien biology. He wrapped her side in bandages, kept her warm under thermal blankets, and watched over her like a soldier on guard duty. Outside, the howls grew louder. Once, something slammed against the walls of the shelter, rattling the panels. Daniel grabbed his rifle and stood ready, finger on the trigger, until the noise faded into the night. He knew the predators were out there, waiting for weakness, but inside, another battle was being fought, a quiet, fragile struggle between life and death. At one point, the alien woman tried to sit up, but pain forced her back down. She spoke again in her strange language, her hand moving slowly, pointing at her stomach, then at him. Daniel frowned, confused. "You want me to protect them?" he guessed. Her eyes softened, a tear sliding down her silver cheek. She nodded. weakly. That single gesture shook him more than the howls outside. She didn't just want his help. She was asking him to take responsibility for her children, for her family. Daniel sat back, running a hand through his hair. He had come to this planet for exploration, for resources, maybe glory. He had never expected this. Never expected to carry the weight of lives that were not even human. But looking at her now, fragile yet strong, terrified yet trusting, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would not abandon her. Dawn finally broke, painting the sky with cold light. The predators retreated into the hills. The alien woman stirred, her strength slowly returning. Daniel was exhausted, but he refused to close his eyes. He sat beside her, rifle across his lap, watching the door, watching her, guarding her like a soldier sworn to duty. The storm of last night had passed, but the true storm had only begun. Somewhere in the distance, machines hummed a sound too sharp, too precise to belong to nature. Daniel tensed. Someone or something was looking for her. And now they would find him too. The birth asterisk. The day passed slowly on the silent planet. Inside the small shelter, the air was heavy with fear and hope. Daniel Hayes sat on a crate near the door, his rifle across his knees, his eyes shifting between the horizon outside and the fragile figure lying on his bunk. The alien woman, he still didn't know her name, had survived the night, but her condition was worsening. Her breaths came in uneven waves. Beads of sweat shone like crystal across her silver skin. Every so often, a tremor ran through her body, and she clutched her swollen stomach tighter, whispering words in her strange language. Daniel didn't need a translator to understand. The time was close. He stood and paced the shelter, nerves crawling across his skin. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "I'm not a doctor. I'm not ready for this." He had helped deliver human children in emergency situations once or twice, but this was beyond his training. He was about to deliver the children of a species he had never seen before. Still, when her violet eyes locked onto his, desperate and pleading, he knew he could not run. He had made his choice when he carried her out of the wreckage. Now there was no turning back. A low rumble shook the ground outside. Dust rattled from the ceiling of the shelter. Daniel froze, listening. The predators had gone with the morning. But this sound was different, metallic, heavy, unnatural. Engines, something in the sky. He peeked out through a small slit in the door. Far in the distance, against the burning light of the rising sun, he saw shapes moving. Machines, drones perhaps. Dark silhouettes scanning the land with beams of red light. "They're searching," he whispered. He wasn't sure if he meant it for himself or for her. Either way, time was running out. When he turned back, she was crying out louder now, her body shaking violently. The sound cut through him like a blade. He rushed to her side, kneeling beside the bunk. "It's happening, isn't it?" he asked, though he already knew. She nodded weakly, her glowing eyes wide with both fear and determination. She grasped his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so weak. She pointed at her stomach, then at him. Her meaning was clear. "Help me. Help them." Daniel swallowed hard. He set aside his rifle, rolled up his sleeves, and pulled open his field kit. He laid out the limited supplies: gloves, gauze, sealant, a scalpel, a small vial of pain suppressant. It was nowhere near enough, but it was all he had. "All right," he muttered, trying to calm himself as much as her. "We're doing this, you and me." The hours that followed were the hardest of Daniel's life. The shelter filled with the sound of her cries, her voice sharp and strange but deeply human in its pain. Daniel guided her through each wave, speaking softly, steadying her breathing. His words meant nothing in her language, but his tone carried weight. "You're strong," he whispered. "Stronger than anyone I've ever met. Just hold on, you're not alone." She squeezed his hand with each contraction, her silver nails digging into his skin. He ignored the pain. His focus stayed on her, on the lives fighting to be born. Outside, the distant hum of drones grew closer. Shadows passed over the shelter as machines drifted above, their scanners painting lines across the barren ground. Daniel prayed they would not notice the small structure, prayed the noise inside would not betray them. Finally, after what felt like forever, the first cry filled the room. Daniel froze, his breath caught in his chest. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, high, sharp, but alive, full of strength. He looked down at his trembling hands, and there, wrapped in gauze, was a newborn alien child. Its skin was pale silver like its mother's, but its small eyes glowed faintly blue. Blinking at the new world. A tear slid down Daniel's cheek. "You're beautiful," he whispered. The mother's voice called him back. Another wave of pain tore through her, and Daniel realized it was not over. Another child was coming. Minutes later, the second cry filled the air. A twin, this one smaller, weaker, but alive. Its eyes glowed faint violet, mirroring its mother's. Daniel placed the infants gently into their mother's arms. She wept openly, her tears shining like liquid crystal as she kissed their foreheads. She whispered words Daniel did not know, but the meaning was clear: love, protection, promise. Daniel sat back, exhausted, his chest heaving. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart pounding with a mix of fear, relief, and awe. He had done it. Against all odds, he had helped bring life into the universe, but the moment of peace did not last. The hum outside grew louder. A sharp red light cut across the slit in the door. Daniel's stomach turned cold. The drones were here. The alien mother looked up at him, her eyes wide with terror. She clutched her children close, whispering frantically. Daniel grabbed his rifle, chambering around, his instincts returning. "They found us," he said softly, almost to himself. He stood by the door, watching as the shadow of a machine passed slowly across the ground outside. The beam of light stopped, lingering on the shelter, scanning. Daniel raised his rifle, his finger tight on the trigger, sweat dripping down his temple. The mother called to him, her voice urgent. He glanced back. She was pointing to the children, then at him. Her meaning was clear: protect them. "No matter what happens to me, protect them." Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded slowly, a silent vow forming in his heart. The drone outside whirred louder. The ground shook as something heavier touched down nearby. Not just a machine, an entire ship. The door rattled under the force of a scanner. Red light bled through the cracks, filling the shelter with a ghostly glow. Daniel took a deep breath. The twins cried softly in their mother's arms, their small voices piercing the tension. The alien woman kissed them, then looked at Daniel. With eyes that burned with desperate trust, he raised his rifle. "If they want you," he whispered, "they'll have to go through me first." The door creaked under pressure. Shadows shifted. The world outside was no longer safe. And inside the shelter, with 2 newborn lives in his care, Daniel realized the truth. He had not only become a rescuer, he had become a guardian. And this fight was only beginning. The separation, the storm of the night had passed, but inside Daniel's shelter, the air was thick with unspoken truth. The alien woman rested on the bunk, her newborn twins cradled gently in her arms. Their tiny breaths were steady, their soft silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Daniel sat across from her, rifle leaning against the wall, his head heavy with exhaustion. His hands still shook from the tension of the night before, but he could not take his eyes off the children. He had faced battles, stared down death, crossed desolate worlds, but nothing had shaken him like the sound of those 2 small cries. He had saved them. Or perhaps they had saved him, yet peace could not last. Every hour, the low hum of engines in the distance grew stronger. Strange flashes lit the horizon, scanners sweeping across the barren land. The drones had not given up. Whoever or whatever was hunting her was still searching. And every passing moment brought them closer. The alien mother knew it too. Her glowing violet eyes shifted to the sealed door often, her body tensing with every distant rumble. She whispered softly to her twins in her language, words Daniel could not understand, but the tone was filled with sorrow. Finally, as the pale sun dipped low, she looked at Daniel. Her gaze was sharp, filled with resolve. She motioned for him to come closer. Daniel hesitated, then stepped to her side. She placed the twins carefully into his arms. For a moment, he froze, unsure how to hold them. But their small bodies fit perfectly against his chest, their warmth sinking into him. His breath caught as tiny fingers gripped his sleeve with surprising strength. Then he looked back at her, and his heart sank. She was not handing them to him just to rest. She was testing him, preparing him. Her lips moved, forming words he could not understand. She pointed at herself, then at the door. She pointed at the children, then at him. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but her face remained steady. Daniel shook his head. "No, you can't mean that." But she did. He could see it in her eyes, the heavy truth she had already accepted. She could not stay. She could not protect them, not in her weakened state, not with hunters closing in. But him, this lone human, this stranger, he had already proven he would fight for them. He had carried her from the wreckage. He had delivered her children. He had stood with his rifle ready against the shadows. To her, that was enough. Daniel's throat tightened. "You're asking me to take them?" She nodded. Slowly. He wanted to argue, wanted to scream that it was insane. These weren't his children. They weren't even his species. He knew nothing about raising them, nothing about their needs, their future. But when he looked down at the twins in his arms, all arguments died. They looked back at him with glowing eyes, one blue, one violet, fragile, innocent, full of life. And for reasons he could not explain, Daniel felt the bond tighten around his heart. The mother struggled to sit up. Pain rippled through her body, but she forced herself upright. She reached toward her children, her trembling hands brushing against their cheeks. Then she touched Daniel's chest right over his heart. Her voice was soft, breaking, but filled with meaning. She whispered one word again and again, the only word he began to understand through tone alone: Father. Daniel's chest ached. He shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. I can't. But she silenced him with a look. It wasn't a request. It was a command, a plea, a gift. She was giving him not just her children, but her trust, her hope, her legacy. Before he could say anything more, a sharp tremor shook the ground. The shelter rattled violently. Outside, the roar of engines thundered closer. Dust rising in clouds across the horizon. Red beams cut through the windows. They had found them. The alien mother's eyes widened. She stood, unsteady but determined. She pressed her children back into Daniel's arms and pointed toward the rear of the shelter. A small hatch, one Daniel had built for emergencies, led to a tunnel beneath the rocks. She was telling him to go. To run, but she was not coming with them. "No," Daniel growled, his voice breaking. "You can't stay here. You won't survive." She shook her head firmly. Her glowing eyes burned with fierce love. She pressed her forehead against each twin, whispering words Daniel could not understand, but felt deep in his soul. Then she looked back at him, her expression calm, resolute. She would stay. She would face them. She would give her children a chance. The roar outside grew deafening. Heavy footsteps shook the earth. The hunters were here. Daniel's chest burned with helpless rage. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to grab his rifle and stand beside her. But when he looked at the children in his arms, he knew his battle had changed. His duty was no longer to fight, it was to protect. Tears blurred his vision as he turned toward the hatch. His boots scraped against the floor, his legs heavy as stone. Behind him, the mother stood tall despite her wounds, her silver skin glowing. faintly in the rising red light outside. As he slipped into the tunnel, carrying the twins close, he heard her final cry. Not of fear, not of pain, but of defiance. A warrior's call, echoing against the walls, the hatch sealed above him. Darkness closed in. Daniel stumbled through the narrow tunnel, his breath ragged, his tears falling freely. The twins whimpered. Softly against his chest, their tiny voices a fragile reminder of the life he now carried. Above, the sound of battle shook the ground. Blasts tore through the air. Metal clashed against metal, and then silence. Daniel did not look back. He could not. The image of her glowing eyes, the weight of her trust, would haunt him forever. When he finally emerged far from the shelter, the horizon was burning. Black smoke curled into the sky where the wreck in his camp had once stood. The hunters were gone, but so was she. Daniel fell to his knees, clutching the twins close. The cold wind whipped across the barren land, carrying away the last traces of her voice. And in that empty silence, he made a vow. I'll protect you, he whispered to the children. Both of you, no matter what it takes. I'll raise you. I'll fight for you. I'll never let her sacrifice be wasted. The twins stirred softly, their glowing eyes reflecting the fire in the distance. To them, he was all they had now. To them, he was more than a protector. He was their father. And though Daniel Hayes had lost her, he carried her legacy in his arms. The return the years had passed like shifting sand, slow but unstoppable. On Earth, Daniel Hayes lived a quiet life, far removed from the chaos of his younger days. His hair was grayer now, his face lined with the marks of battles and sleepless nights. But the greatest mark he carried was not on his skin, it was in his heart. The memory of that day on the alien world never left him. The silver-skinned woman, her violet eyes burning with love and sorrow, pressing her children into his arms. Her final cry of defiance before the hunters took her. And the smoke that filled the sky as Daniel ran with her twins through the tunnels. He had raised them for as long as he could. At first he was their protector, keeping them hidden from the dangers that still lingered in the galaxy. But their biology was different, their growth rapid and mysterious. What should have taken human children decades took only a handful of years. They grew strong, smart, curious, and then one night they were gone. Taken, or perhaps called back. To their own people. Daniel never knew. All he had left was silence. For years, he woke with their voices echoing in his ears. Dad. Then nothing. So he buried the past. He left the stars behind, retired to a small home near the edge of the mountains, and tried to convince himself that life was simple again. But in the quiet, his heart never let him forget. It was on a cold autumn evening, years later, that the sky broke open once more. Daniel was on his porch, a cup of coffee warming his hands, when he felt the ground tremble. At first, he thought, it was an earthquake. Then the lights appeared, brilliant streaks cutting across the twilight sky. He set his cup down slowly, his pulse quickening. Not again, he whispered. The streaks slowed, hovering above the tree line. A low hum filled the air, familiar and alien all at once. His breath caught. He remembered that sound. He had heard it before, on that desolate planet, when the hunters came. His hand went instinctively to the old rifle mounted on his wall. But as the ship descended, he hesitated. Something was different this time. The craft landed gently in the meadow beyond his house, grass bending under its weight. Its hull glowed faint silver, marked with symbols Daniel half recognized, shapes like the ones etched into the wreck long ago. The ramp hissed open. Smoke curled into the night air. Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle. He should run, he should hide. But his legs wouldn't move. His heart was pounding too hard, whispering something his mind could not yet accept. Two figures emerged from the light. They were tall, lean, their skin a pale silver that shimmered beneath the moonlight. Their eyes glowed softly, one blue, one violet, Daniel's rifle slipped from his hands. The figures walked closer, their movements calm, deliberate. When they reached him, they stopped just a few steps away. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then the taller of the two spoke. "Father." The word struck Daniel harder than any bullet. His knees went weak. His chest felt like it might burst. He stared at them, his throat tight, his voice breaking. It can't be you." But it was. The twins, grown now, no longer fragile infants, but strong young adults, stood before him. Their faces were alien and yet achingly familiar. Their gaze carried the weight of the woman who had trusted him all those years ago. The smaller one, whose violet eyes mirrored their mother's, stepped forward. Their voice trembled. "She told us. You saved us. She told us your name. She told us you were our father." Daniel's vision blurred as tears filled his eyes. He reached out a trembling hand, and they took it without hesitation. Their touch was warm, solid, real. For years, he had feared they were lost forever. For years, he had wondered if he had failed them. And now here they were, alive, grown, calling him Dad. He pulled them into his arms, his voice breaking. "I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd never see you again." The twins held him tightly, their voices soft in his ear. "We never forgot. She never let us forget." They stayed like that for a long moment. 3 lives bound by a promise, a sacrifice, a love that had crossed species and years. But even in the warmth of reunion, Daniel felt the shadow of something heavier. When they finally pulled back, the blue-eyed twins' face turned serious. "We didn't come only to see you. We came because we need you," Daniel frowned. "Need?" "Emmy," the violet-eyed twin nodded. "Our people are in danger. The same hunters who came for her. They are coming again, stronger, more ruthless. We cannot face them alone." The words cut through Daniel like a blade. He looked at them, at the fire in their glowing eyes, at the determination etched into their young faces. They were not children anymore. They were warriors. But they had come back to him, not only as family, but with a plea. The blue-eyed twin placed a hand on his shoulder. "She told us you would fight for us. She told us you would never turn away. She told us you were the reason we lived." Daniel's throat tightened. He turned his gaze toward the sky, where stars glittered like cold fire. For so long, he had hidden from the galaxy, from the pain of loss, from the weight of what he had once carried. But standing here now, with their hands on his, he felt the call again. He could not refuse. "All right," he said softly, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "If they're coming for you, they'll have to go through me first." The twins exchanged a look, one of relief, of pride, of belonging. For the first time in years, Daniel saw the reflection of her in their faces. The woman he had lost. The woman who had trusted him with everything. Through them, she lived on. The ramp of the ship glowed behind them, inviting, waiting. The twins stepped aside, gesturing for him to follow. Daniel glanced once more at his quiet house, the life he had built in solitude. Then he looked at the stars above and the 2 lives standing before him. He made his choice, with steady steps. He walked up the ramp, the twins beside him. The ship's engines hummed to life, lifting them into the night sky. And as Earth shrank behind them, Daniel Hayes realized something he had known deep inside since that first night in the crater. He was no longer just a rescuer. No longer just a soldier. He was a father, and his fight was far from over. The revelation. The hum of the alien ship was steady and low, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Daniel Hayes sat in one of the sleek silver chairs inside the vessel, staring out at the stars rushing past. The Earth was already a shrinking dot behind them. Across from him sat the twins, no longer children, no longer fragile lives in his arms, but beings who carried both strength and sorrow in their glowing eyes. Their faces were calm, but Daniel sensed the tension beneath their steady expressions. For a long time, none of them spoke. Daniel's hands rested on his knees, fingers drumming lightly. The silence was heavy, filled with all the questions he had carried for years. Finally, he broke it. "You said your people are in danger, that the hunters are coming again. I need you to tell me everything. No more secrets." The blue-eyed twin leaned forward, their voice firm. "You deserve the truth. After all, you are part of the story as much as we are." The violet-eyed twin placed a hand over their siblings, nodding softly before turning to Daniel. "Do you know who she was? Our mother?" Daniel's throat tightened. He saw her face against silver skin, violet eyes, glowing with both fear and courage. He had never even learned her name. "I know only what I saw. She was strong, she was brave. She saved you, even if it cost her everything." The twins exchanged a glance, then the violet-eyed one spoke. "Her name was Celiara." "She was not only our mother, she was a leader, a protector of our people. She carried us because we were more than children. We were hope." Daniel frowned. "Hope?" The blue-eyed twin nodded. "Our people, the Iliari, have been hunted for centuries. The ones you call hunters are part of an empire, vast and merciless. They see us not as equals, not as lives, but as resources, our bodies, our energy. They use us to fuel their machines. To them, we are nothing more than living batteries." Daniel's stomach turned. He clenched his fists. "That's why they came after her. That's why they wanted you." "Yes," the violet-eyed twin said softly. "But our mother was different. She carried visions, she saw futures. And she believed in one future above all others, one where her children would survive because of you." "A human." Daniel blinked, shaken. "Me? Why me?" "She saw your heart," the blue-eyed twin replied. "She saw the choice you made when you could have walked away. And she trusted you, even with her final breath. That choice changed everything." The weight of their words pressed down on Daniel like a mountain. He remembered that night, standing in the crater, his rifle ready, fear screaming at him to leave. But he hadn't. He had carried her out, and with that one act, the course of their lives had shifted. Daniel leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "So what you're saying is, I was never just saving her. I was saving all of you." The violet-eyed twin nodded. "You were saving our future, but now that future is in danger again. The hunters have found us. They are building new machines, stronger than ever before. They will not stop until we are gone." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And you think I can stop them?" The blue-eyed twin's voice was calm but unwavering. "Not alone. But with us, yes. You understand things we do not: strategy, war, survival. You lived through battles where everything seemed lost. We need that. We need you." Daniel felt a storm churning inside him. He had sworn years ago, as he held them in his arms, that he would protect them no matter what. But he had also left that life behind, retreating to Earth, burying the pain of loss. He was no leader, no hero. Not anymore. He looked at them as children, though not by blood. Their glowing eyes reflected her spirit, her courage. And in their faces he saw not only what they had become, but what they could lose if he refused. "What if I fail?" he asked quietly. The violet-eyed twin reached across the table, placing their hand on his. "Then we fail together. But if we do nothing, we are lost for certain. At least with you, we have a chance." Silence fell again, but this time it was not heavy. It was filled with quiet understanding. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear Celiara's voice, though he had never known her words. He remembered her final gaze, her trust as she handed him the twins. Protect them. When he opened his eyes, resolve burned there. "All right. Tell me everything. Their ships, their weapons, their leaders. If I'm going to fight for you, I need to know the battlefield." The twins' faces lit with relief, but there was still gravity. In their eyes, the blue-eyed twin began. The hunters are part of the Dominion. Their fleets stretch across dozens of systems. Their strength is in numbers and machines, but they are not invincible. They fear resistance. They fear unity. The violet-eyed twin added, "Our people are scattered, hidden in colonies, caves, ruins of old worlds. If we can unite them, give them hope, we can stand. But hope alone is not enough. We need a symbol. Someone who proves survival is possible." Daniel tilted his head. "And you think that's me?" The blue-eyed twin's voice softened. "To us, you already are. You were our father when no one else was. To our people, you can be the one who bridges the gap between human and Eliari. The one who shows them we can stand together." Daniel laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. A tired old soldier, a washed-up explorer, leading an alien race into war? That sounds insane. "Maybe," the violet-eyed twin said gently. "But insanity is what kept you alive when others would have died, and it's what saved us." For a long time, Daniel said nothing. He stared out at the stars, the endless sea of light stretching beyond imagination. Once, it had filled him with wonder. Later, it had filled him with fear. Now it filled him with something else, purpose. He turned back to them, his eyes sharp. "Steady. If we're going to do this, we do it right. No half measures, we build alliances. We strike where it hurts. And we make damn sure the Dominion learns one thing: human, or Eliari, we don't bow." The twins exchanged a look of pride. For the first time in years, Daniel felt alive again. The weight of age, regret, and loss seemed to lift. In its place was fire. The ship's console beeped, interrupting the moment. The violet-eyed twin tapped it, and a hologram flared into life above the table. It showed a star map, dozens of glowing points, most dim, some flickering. "These are the remnants of our people," they explained. "Scattered, hiding, waiting. But if we can reach them, bring them together, we will have an army, a family, a future." Daniel studied the map, his heart heavy but resolute. He saw the dim lights, the fading hope. And he knew this was more than survival. This was legacy. He leaned forward, his voice low but steady. "Then we start now. We gather your people. We make them believe, and when the hunters come," he tightened his fist, "we show them what it means when humans fight for family." The twins smiled, their glowing eyes bright with determination. For them, this was not just a fight. It was destiny. And for Daniel Hayes, it was the answer to the vow he had made so many years ago. He had promised to protect them. Now he would protect them all. The Legacy Asterisk, the ship descended into the shadow of a dying world. From orbit, Daniel Hayes saw the scars that stretched across its surface-burned cities. Shattered towers, and craters like wounds that would never heal. This was Eliara Prime, once the heart of the Eliari people. Now a husk under Dominion control. Daniel stood beside the twins on the viewing deck. His reflection in the glass showed a man aged by war and loss, but his eyes burned with new fire. Behind them, Eliari survivors, refugees, soldiers, children watched in silence. Word had spread quickly. The human who once saved the children of Ciliora had returned. Now he stood not only as their guardian, but as their chosen. The twins had told the story again and again. How Daniel carried their mother from the wreck. How he delivered them into the world. How he defied the hunters with nothing but courage and love. To the Eliari, he was no longer just a human. He was proof that hope could come from anywhere. But Daniel knew the truth. He was no hero. He was a man who had once made a choice in a crater. A man who had promised to protect 2 children and had never let that promise die. And now, those children were warriors leading him into the greatest fight of his life. The gathering storm, the ship touched down in the ruins of an ancient temple. Its broken pillars glowed faintly with Eliari symbols, once bright with energy, now dimmed by centuries of oppression. Crowds gathered as Daniel and the twins stepped down the ramp. The survivors watched him with eyes full of questions, fear, and fragile hope. Their silver skins shimmered faintly in the twilight, their glowing eyes reflecting the fire of the torches. Daniel hesitated at the base of the ramp. He had never been a man of speeches, but the moment demanded one. The blue-eyed twin whispered, "They are waiting for you." Daniel looked at the crowd, at the faces of people who had lost everything. He thought of Saliara, of her final gaze, her trust. He thought of the twins calling him Dad after all these years. And then he spoke. "I am not Eliari," he began, his voice rough but strong. "I don't know your history the way you do. I don't carry your blood. But I know your pain. Because I saw it in her eyes, the woman who gave everything so her children could live. I carried her children. I raised them. And I swore I would never let her sacrifice be wasted." He paused, his chest heavy. "The Dominion thinks you are weak. They think you are prey. But I know different. You are survivors. You are warriors. And if you stand together, if you fight not only for revenge, but for each other, then you will be more than survivors. You will be free." The crowd stirred. Murmurs rippled through them. Some lowered their heads, tears shining. Others clenched their fists. Daniel's voice grew sharper. "I am just one man. But I will stand with you. I will fight with you. Because family is worth everything." The silence broke. A cry rose from the crowd, then another. Soon the ruins shook with voices, Eliari calling not just for survival, but for battle. For freedom. And for the first time in centuries, hope burned again on Eliara Prime. The battle for Eliarath, Dominion came at dawn. Their ships blotted out the sky, black and red machines descending like vultures. Troops poured from their carriers, armored and armed, eyes glowing with the cold hunger of conquest. Their war machines stalked across the ruins, cannons burning with energy. Daniel stood at the front lines, rifle in hand, the twins on either side of him. Behind them, the Eliario warriors spread across the rubble, their weapons glowing faintly with ancient energy. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not out of spirit. The first blast tore through the temple walls. Dust rained down. Daniel raised his rifle, firing into the advancing troops. The battle roared to life. It was chaos. Energy beams scorched the ground. Explosions lit the ruins. The Eliari fought fiercely, their cries echoing across the battlefield. But the Dominion pressed harder, their machines crushing forward. Daniel moved like a man reborn. Every lesson from years of war came back. He barked commands, signaling fighters to flank, ordering cover fire, guiding their defense with precision. The Eliari listened, their trust in him unshaken. Beside him, the twins unleashed their power. The blue-eyed one wielded energy that crackled like lightning, tearing through enemy lines. The violet-eyed one moved with grace, weaving shields of shimmering force that deflected blasts. Together, they were unstoppable, and yet, they always fought close to him, never leaving his side. At one point, a Dominion war machine broke through, towering over the ruins. Its cannons locked onto Daniel. He braced himself, ready for the end, but the twins leapt in front of him, their powers combining in a blinding wave. The blast ricocheted back, tearing the machine apart. Daniel stared at them, awe and fear in his chest. They were no longer the helpless infants he had once carried. They were warriors, his children. The battle raged for hours. Bodies fell, the ground burned, and still the Eliari stood. Every time Daniel thought they would break, he saw their eyes glowing. With fire, with his words, with Saliara's spirit. Finally, as the sun broke through the smoke, the Dominion faltered. Their commander fell, struck down by the twins' combined fury. Their ships pulled back, retreating into the sky. The battlefield fell silent, save for the cries of victory. The Eliari had won. The legacy as the survivors gathered in the ruins. Daniel stood with the twins at the temple's heart. The people chanted their names, their voices shaking the ground. But when they looked at Daniel, their cries shifted. "Father," they called. "Guardian, human, Elyari." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had never wanted titles. Never wanted glory. But as he looked at the faces of the people, at the children smiling through tears, he understood. This was not about him. It was about what he represented. The blue-eyed twins stepped forward, their voice carrying across the crowd. "He is not just our father. He is yours too. Not by blood, but by choice. He chose us when the universe abandoned us. He gave us life when others sought our death. And now he has given us freedom," the violet-eyed twin added, their eyes glowing with emotion. "Our mother saw this future. She trusted him. And today, her vision has come true. We are not prey. We are not slaves. We are Elyari, and we will never bow again." The crowd roared. The ruins shook with voices, united not just in victory, but in belonging. Daniel lowered his head, tears slipping down his weathered face. He thought of Selyara again, her final gaze, her trust. He wished he could see this moment. In a way, he knew she could. She lived in the twins, in every glowing eye, in every cry of freedom. He whispered softly, almost to himself. "I kept my promise." The twins placed their hands on his shoulders, their voices steady. "And now we will keep ours. You will never fight alone again." Daniel lifted his head, his eyes scanning the horizon. The battle was won, but the war was not over. The Dominion would return. They always did, but for the first time, Daniel felt no fear. He felt pride, purpose, family. The human who once rescued a pregnant alien woman had become more than a savior, more than a soldier, more than a father. He had become a legend, and his legacy would live on, not only in the twins who called him Dad, but in the entire Elyari people who now carried his vow to fight, to endure, to protect. No matter the cost.